Tyrese Maxey knows how to have a good time. On the basketball court, he's always smiling. Unlike many NBA greats, famous for dismantling opponents with blistering trash talk and a stone-cold stare, Tyrese will do it while trying to be your friend. Don't be fooled though. Given his cheeriness, you might think the Sixers star is used to having things go his way, but that's not the case. Throughout his life, he has faced adversity more difficult than most of us can imagine. While his struggles on the basketball court pale in comparison, there have been plenty of those too. Whether it was forgetting how to shoot as one of the nation's most hyped one-and-done college freshmen, falling like a rock in the NBA draft, or being thrust into team crises involving not one but two of the NBA's moodiest superstars, he stayed smiling through it all. The one time he got so upset he was moved to tears, it was after scoring 46 points. Nowadays, he casually drops 50. That's just Tyrese Maxey. So how does he keep his head up through all of life's bad bounces? Well, it's thanks to a lesson from his grandmothers, a love for popcorn, and a passion for sharing the joys of life with those around him. Oh, and he does have something in common with the legends of the game. He likes to be in the gym early.
He said, go out there and help us get a W. And I told him I got him.
The Maxey household in the Dallas suburb of Garland, Texas was always a lively one. Along with Tyrese's parents and 3 sisters, both of his grandmothers live with the family too, and brought with them an intergenerational perspective not always on offer for a kid so young. Every morning, they would remind their grandson that just by waking up that day, life had gifted him with another beautiful opportunity. That alone was something to be happy about. But they probably didn't have to say anything to young Tyrese, whose natural exuberance had him smiling while sprinting down the hallways and cannonballing onto the couch. Worried that he might hurt himself, his family members took turns trying to keep him entertained. His grandmothers would take him along on weekly trips around the neighborhood, delivering food to those who didn't have the ability to leave home themselves. Tyrese's dad Tyrone was a high school basketball coach, and he shared a passion for the game with his son from an early age. The father and son would spend hours playing one-on-one in the driveway, showdowns which always ended with the same result, a victory for dad. One time, fed up with losing, an upset Tyrese ran inside right into the arms of his mom Denise and told her what had happened. "Why won't you let him win just once?" she asked her husband. "Because he needs to learn," Tyrone replied. An incredulous Denise asked what exactly her son had to learn. He was 7 years old after all. But Tyrone probably wasn't so far off. The elder Maxey knew better than anybody how cutthroat the game of basketball could be. Having ascended to stardom as a top high school prospect in the early 90s, he signed with Washington State, sold on the dream of playing lead guard for one of the nation's most exciting programs. After 2 difficult years riding the bench, he learned the uncomfortable truth. Your game needs to speak for itself. His son's game would have to do just that. When Tyrese was 8, he told his father that he wanted to be like his basketball idol Dwayne Wade. Tyrone, in response, asked when they were going to stop playing one-on-one. If he wanted to be like D Wade, he would have to train like D Wade. No more goofing around. The next day, when the Maxeys went out in the driveway for their daily game, Tyrese told his dad that he wanted to train. Tyrone didn't hold back, challenging his son to dribble multiple balls to improve his handling and get used to shooting from all spots on the court. He would compile highlights of NBA stars like Steph Curry and Kyrie Irving and have Tyrese watch them over and over again in order to pick up on their moves. But while his son sure had the drive to work like the game's biggest stars, Tyrone wasn't sure he had the it factor to match. That was until a 6th grade Tyrese scored 45 in an AAU championship game with a broken index finger. The kid had it all right.
We've been saying that we were going to win a state championship. We said we were going to win multiple state championships, actually. But now it's here. So starting next Friday, well, actually starting on Monday, get in and see who we're playing. But it just feels great.
But it wasn't always enough, especially if it was the same trick over and over. Tyrese, with his natural speed and finishing ability, had gotten quite good at driving the lane. But as he entered South Garland High School and started playing against higher level competition, teams would strategize to take away this particular aspect of his game. He needed several tools in his toolbox, and one he had yet to develop was a jump shot. Recognizing this weakness in his son's skill set, Tyrone told Tyrese one day that he wasn't allowed to drive anymore. Restricted to only outside shots, Tyrese had no choice but to work on his jumper, and before long he had blossomed into a great shooter. In fact, his shooting is probably what earned him an offer from the University of Kentucky. From Derrick Rose to De'Aaron Fox, UK coach John Calipari had a reputation of guiding scoring guards to eventual success in the NBA. Tyrese, he suggested, could be next in line. But Coach Cal likely didn't have to do too much convincing. In the 9th grade, Tyrese had hung up in his room a self-drawn picture of himself in a Kentucky jersey, and from about that time he started telling all his friends he would be a Wildcat. Used to his dad's tough coaching, he wouldn't back down from Coach Cal's hard-driving approach. He understood where it came from. The desire to get better and to win. Because no matter the accolades, winning is what Tyrese cared about most. This lone focus became obvious the time during his junior year of high school that he scored 46 points in the semifinal of the state tournament, only to fall short of advancing to the championship game. Despite tying the all-time record for points scored in a tourney game, the individual performance meant nothing to Tyrese, who cried afterwards about his team having been eliminated. In his mind, he hadn't done enough. But sometimes he would learn you just had to do what you could. While traveling with his father to the CP3 basketball camp in North Carolina shortly after committing to UK, Tyrese was mid-workout when he received a phone call that nobody ever wants to receive. It was his mom, telling him that Tyrone had suffered a stroke back at the hotel, and that paramedics were hurrying him to a local hospital. Tyrese arrived to find his father in critical condition, with doctors saying that an emergency surgery might be the only chance of saving his life. As the lone family member present, the decision of whether to do it was up to Tyrese. In that moment, he felt powerless and alone. But he fell back on the lesson his father had taught him in the driveway way back when. Life, like basketball, is hard. You can't run away from the brutal reality. The best you can do sometimes is put on a brave smile in the face of it all. Tyrese told the doctors to go ahead with the surgery. It was successful. Tyrone faced a tedious, months-long recovery, but he would survive. Tyrese's willingness to do what he could when he couldn't do it all is what probably saved his up-and-down freshman season at Kentucky. A breakout 26-point performance against Michigan State in his debut thrust the 19-year-old into the spotlight, but from that point on, his season was hit or miss. From the three-point line, it was mostly miss. Shooting a terrible 29% from behind the arc on high usage, it seemed as if the usually accurate Tyrese was forcing things a bit. Luckily, his ability to drive the lane remained intact, and he put up several impressive performances later in the year, including a near triple-double against future number 1 pick Anthony Edwards. Used to pushing his best players to the edge, Coach Cal laid into his star during practice, but had trouble sometimes knowing when to stop. Tyrese just kept on smiling. Still, disappointing shooting numbers quieted the hype around him, and despite clearly still being a one-and-done prospect, he started to slide on draft boards. That and COVID canceled the 2020 NCAA tournament as well as many pre-draft workouts, leaving him with few opportunities to prove himself to interested teams. Nonetheless, Tyrese was all smiles on draft night, confident he had shown enough to be selected as one of the top few picks. Unfortunately, this was not to be the case. His agent Rich Paul, who had been telling him all night he had a good shot of being selected when each potential team came up on the clock, had shifted into simply repeating the mantra fit over pick, words which were not all that reassuring to Tyrese, who might have begun to wonder if he would be picked at all. When pick 21 came around, it was to be made by the Sixers, a team he had not even met with, and one which only had the pick due to the inconceivable bubble heroics of career NBA benchwarmer Mike Muscala. Not thrown off by the unfamiliarity, Philly went with the best player on its board and selected the Kentucky freshman.
I trust myself, I put the work in, and I'm just so excited, man.
Fit over pick indeed, but you had to question whether or not this was a good fit. Philly had a ball-dominant point guard in Ben Simmons, who would leave Tyrese few opportunities to handle and run the attack. Moreover, newly appointed Sixers coach Doc Rivers' notorious reputation of not letting young players on the court meant the rookie would have to fight for every minute of playing time. During the first month of his first season for the Sixers, these concerns largely played out as expected. Tyrese, only afforded short stints off the bench, struggled to get into rhythm. His instructions often were to stand in the corner and wait for the kickout in order to shoot an open three. If he missed, he soon realized, he might not get back in the game all night. Having to come in cold off the bench and serve as a spot-up shooter was not a role Tyrese had ever excelled in, but he would have to make the most of it. Oddly, the same factor which led to his fall in the draft worked for once in his favor. Before a January game against the Nuggets, half the Sixers roster was ruled out with COVID, leaving the team with only the required minimum 8 players. In the absence of Simmons and Joel Embiid, Tyrese would have to take the reins. Finally given the green light to take the ball up the court and shoot from wherever he liked, the rookie recorded a career-high 39 points on efficient shooting. While the undermanned Sixers lost the game, even the stubborn Doc realized he would have to give Tyrese a bigger role. Despite the minutes increase, Tyrese showed growing pains throughout the rest of his rookie season, and played only a minimal part in Philly's eventual Game 7 loss against the Atlanta Hawks. Perhaps it was lucky he did, since the Sixers' 2 main stars faced intense criticism from the fans and media after their sorry showing. Simmons in particular bore the brunt of it, after having passed up a wide-open dunk in a crucial moment down the stretch, and by the start of the next season, he was refusing to play for the team. In the chaos that followed, Tyrese faced countless questions, including whether he would have to play point, or if he'd be included in a trade package to ship out his disgruntled all-star teammate. While the front office patiently considered trade offers, he was thrust into the starting lineup, now the point guard for a team without its point guard. Number 0 excelled at attacking the basket with the ball in his hands, but running the offense presented an unfamiliar challenge. He at times struggled with turning the ball over and getting his teammates involved.
They're like, man, are you ever sad? I'm like, yeah, I'm sad sometimes. Like last night, I didn't feel like I played great at all. But, this morning I woke up.
While his new role on the court remained a work in progress, Tyrese had a lot to feel thankful for heading into the holidays. With his whole family gathered at his new house in Voorhees, New Jersey to celebrate, all the basketball-related drama quickly dissipated. It was Christmas Eve, and the family stacked presents under the tree as Tyrese's chef prepared a festive feast, including the Ballers' favorite, lobster fried rice. Just as they were sitting down to eat, Tyrone caught a whiff of an unusual smell. Something it seemed like was burning. Sure enough, white smoke was drifting in from the door to the laundry room, and opening it confirmed the entire room had been engulfed in flames. As Tyrese's uncle scrambled for the fire extinguisher, the rest of the family quickly gathered themselves and evacuated the house. What looked at first to be a small fire quickly grew too large to contain, and by the time the fire department arrived, it was too late. Standing out in the freezing cold, the Maxeys watched as the fire consumed the entire house. Still, all of them were safe, and everything that burned that day, it could be replaced. But this didn't stop the heartache Tyrese experienced when he saw his twin nieces crying over the fact they would have no Christmas presents. He would have to make it up to them. The Sixers got a late Christmas present in the form of former MVP James Harden, who arrived shortly before the trade deadline. The jolly, bearded, and slightly chunky superstar played the role of Santa Claus, as his presence meant that Tyrese could play more off-ball, the role he was typically accustomed to. This change allowed Tyrese to increase both his scoring average and his shooting percentage down the home stretch. In the playoffs, the Sixers played well for a team still building its chemistry. Tyrese notched a playoff career-high 38 against the Raptors in the first round, as well as 34 against Miami in the conference semis. After being eliminated by the Heat in 6 games, the Sixers shifted focus to the following year. With the roster seemingly solidified and a lack of the familiar offseason drama, Tyrese for the first time in what felt like forever looked to enter a new season with his role well defined. At least until the Sixers traded for Grizzlies guard DeAnthony Melton. Not only did Melton play the same position as Tyrese, the two had formed a bit of a rivalry during their matchups in seasons past, and it turned out the duo had opposite personalities. So when assistant coach Sam Cassell directed them both to team up for offseason workouts, initial tension was hard to avoid. When the question of when to schedule practice came up, DeAnthony suggested a relaxed 10 a.m. start. Tyrese, defiant, said he preferred 6 a.m. DeAnthony, as the veteran, had the final say, so they went with 10. When the new Sixer rolled up to the gym at 9:55, Tyrese was already there, drenched in sweat. "How early did you get here?" DeAnthony asked. Tyrese answered by saying with a smile that this would be his second workout of the day. The two later became great friends.
Why y'all look so serious?
So how does Tyrese fuel himself to bring his trademark energy even in the morning's earliest hours? The secret might be his favorite snack. Popcorn, an appropriate choice for a player who can heat up in a hurry. Tyrese doesn't just like popcorn, he loves it, eating it both before and after every game. Even the staff in visiting arenas knows to have it ready for him when the Sixers come to town. The Chicago Bulls learned the extent of Maxey's popcorn addiction the hard way. After a November game that season at the United Center, the Bulls brought a white drawstring bag filled with freshly popped popcorn about the size of a trash bag to the Sixers' locker room and left it in front of Tyrese's locker. The immense quantity of the snack was presumably for the entire team, but Tyrese took it all for himself. Why the obsession with popcorn? Well, when he was little, his mom told him it was healthy, good fiber, or something like that. Tyrese tends to listen to his mom. They FaceTime 6 to 7 times per day, and one thing that his mom told him over the years was to be a good teammate, advice which came especially handy during the 2023 offseason. After another heartbreaking Game 7 defeat to the Celtics in the playoffs, Sixers management had gotten cold feet about giving Harden a big money extension, and the slighted star put in his customary trade request. When things got ugly with Harden calling Philly GM Daryl Morey a liar in the media, many saw a repeat of the Simmons saga. That it didn't turn out that way was largely thanks to Tyrese, who refused to say a bad word about Harden, greeting his backcourt mate in preseason practices with his usual smile. Harden, accused of sabotage when seeking his way out from former teams, did no such thing this time around, participating in drills in earnest and trying his best to be civil despite clearly wanting to be gone. After Harden was finally traded to the Clippers, Maxey sent his former teammate a text saying that he loved and appreciated him, and thanking the veteran star for taking him under his wing. When prodded to badmouth Harden in press conferences, he refused to do so, preferring to take the high road, the only road he really ever takes. Tyrese takes the high road because he knows that you never really know what somebody else might be going through. He learned this personally as a kid, when his parents had to scrabble together funds to pay for him to attend tournaments or basketball clinics. Sometimes there's a struggle going on behind the scenes, and Tyrese, now an NBA star, wants to do his part to help alleviate that. That's why when starting his own basketball camp for kids in Dallas, Philly, and Lexington, he made sure the cost of attendance was free for all participants. Funding it all out of his own pocket, the joy on the kids' faces as he coached them through drills was more than enough to justify the cost. The same goes for his annual Thanksgiving turkey giveaway, in which he hands out holiday meals to those who might not be able to afford it. In 2023, he gave out over 1,000 turkeys to Philadelphians, along with, of course, his signature smile.
And hey, man, I just went out there and tried my best.
But Tyrese isn't just giving out in the community. He's also doing so on the court. In a recent game against the Pacers, he donned the unusual color choice of mismatched pink and purple sneakers. When asked about the meaning behind his shoes, he had a simple answer. Those were the favorite colors of his nieces, and that day happened to be their birthday. Uncle Tyrese wanted to let them know he was thinking about them, even if he couldn't be there to celebrate. In another recent game, also against Indiana, Tyrese scored a remarkable 50 points, joining Anthony Davis and Kobe Bryant as the only players to do so 23 years old or younger. After the feat, he dedicated his performance to teammate Kelly Oubre, who had been injured during a vehicle accident the day before. And he even gave a shout out to Mike, thanking him and saying, "I like being here." Tyrese always wants to make it about somebody other than himself. When you start to score in the 50s though, that's kind of hard to do. But no matter how many points Tyrese scores, the most important thing to him is winning. And even though he won't stop smiling in the face of defeat, that doesn't mean he's okay with it. While he may have come a long way from crying in the car after a loss in the state semifinal, he's still the same old Tyrese. As he continues to come into his own as one of the league's brightest stars, it remains to be seen whether he can lead the Sixers to the mountaintop. Regardless, one thing's for sure. He'll be there, bright and early in the practice gym, getting up shots, smiling as if he thinks they all might go in.